So we're going to start by base coating your tumbler. You can choose to prep your tumbler. I do not because I don't find it necessary. So I'm just using my pop of color brush and my pop of color paints, and I'm just applying a somewhat of a thick coat here. Now you do want to work fast. We don't want to let this dry because we are going to be using our paint to apply our glitter here. So once I have my cup fully covered, I'm then just going to take my glitter and dump it directly onto the wet paint here, and that's what's going to hold my glitter, and then we'll want to let that fully dry before we move on to the epoxy. So once that paint is dry, I've just went ahead and mixed up 10 milliliters each part A and B epoxy, and I'm going to apply that over the entire tumbler, and then just make sure that you use a torch to pop any of those micro bubbles. Once you let that cure, if you find that your base coat here on your first coat isn't that smooth, you can sand and apply another coat because you will want a smooth cup for this next part. So now I've got my clear cast pattern. So these do have a transparent background. Now you do have a couple of design choices that you can choose from. So with my design here, I decided to do a half of one and half of another design. So I'm just peeling the backing back, and then the nice thing with these clear cast decals is that if you accidentally place it, you can just carefully peel it back up and then reposition it as needed. So I'm just making sure when I'm applying it, I am pressing down to make sure I don't have any of those air bubbles trapped, because they will show under the epoxy. So if you do get an air bubble, just use a weeding tool pen and you can just essentially pop that air bubble out. So you can either wrap your design all the way around the cup, or you can do the same design that I'm doing here, and I just did a little more, or about halfway around the cup. I didn't measure it perfectly because I didn't need to for this design. And then I am using this little cup edge trimmer for the bottom of my cup, just so it cuts the bottom piece off perfectly even. Now I did this for the bottom and the top as well. Now I left room on the bottom and the top of my cup because you'll see later on in the video how I'm going to kind of cover that up and add just some extra glitter there as well. This part isn't necessary. If you wanted to leave it as a full design, you definitely can. However, I went with a different route for this one. So now I'm just taking my other design, and then I have already trimmed this, and I'm just going to place it on the other half of my cup. And I did leave a little extra space on the sides because I am going to cover that up with my washi tape. But if you wanted to line it up perfectly, you can definitely match those sides up. So again, just make sure that you're applying pressure when you are placing this clear cast so you don't have any of those air bubbles. And then here I'm just trimming this excess that I have on my side. Now for this design, I decided not to trim the top or the bottom because I didn't want the glitter to cover that. So you'll see in the next step here why I did it that way. So I wanted to add something extra to this tumbler without adding additional glitter. So I am using my nail foil washi tape here, this holographic rose color almost, and I'm just going to apply it to the sides of the design to kind of hide those edges. So then I went back and I'm using this super fine thin nail foil tape. It's the same holographic color as the one on the side, but I kind of wanted to give it that extra sparkle look, so I'm just going through and detailing some of these lines just to make it stand out a little more. Now if you don't have any of the nail foils on hand, you can definitely replicate this look by just going in with a metallic paint marker. And you do need a fine hand, or you can cover up the rest of the lines with just some painter's tape just so you get those lines nice and even on there. I do not have a straight hand and I cannot get perfect lines, so I just chose to go with the tape because it was a little bit easier for me. If you do decide to go with the washi tape or the nail tape, I definitely recommend using quick coat to seal this before you go in with your epoxy, because this tape does tend to repel the epoxy, especially with how thin it is. You don't want that lifting up because that will cause rough edges on your tumbler. So I just like to seal it with quick coat and then just leave that to completely dry, which is typically about 30 minutes. Once that's dry, I am just mixing up 15 milliliters each part A and B epoxy, and then I'm going to apply that over the entire tumbler. So to cover up the lines that I trimmed off earlier of the image, I just went back in with this super pretty pink glitter and I just very lightly sprinkled it only on the half of the cup, just on the tops and the bottom, and I just barely went down just a little bit onto the actual design, so I tried to not cover much of that up. Now you just want to let that cure. Now we're ready to apply our final coat, so I just mixed up 15 milliliters each part A and B epoxy, and I'm applying that over the entire tumbler. Then you'll just want to let that fully cure, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I can't wait to see what you create.